Welcome back to Sweet Sycamore. These are short, sweet devotional podcasts. My name is Nicole, and I just love getting into the Word with you. I'm also a women's ministry director, so I do these lessons with hundreds of women in our women's ministry called our Mighty Women Gatherings. And doing them through a podcast platform allows those who couldn't make it to catch up, but also allows those across the United States to join in on just digging into the Word with us. So we are in part 2 of our Chosen for More, and we're talking about the life of John the Baptist. Now, I left you with this question: why wasn't John the Baptist chosen to be a disciple? And I left you hanging last time, so I promise you this time we will answer it at the end of this devotion. But first, we need to catch up on where we left off with John's life. Right after John the Baptist baptizes Jesus, he starts talking about how Herod should not have taken his sister-in-law as a wife. Of course, they both get angry and they throw John in prison. After this moment, Jesus' ministry really picks up, full steam ahead. And the next passage we're going to read today takes place about 12 to 18 months later after Jesus has been baptized by John, which means that John has been in prison for 12 to 18 months, which will help us make sense of this. So we're going to pick up in Matthew 11 and read first verses 2 through 3. And it says, John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. So he sent his disciples to ask Jesus, "Are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else?" Many think that this could be a very big moment of doubt in John the Baptist's life. Now remember, John would have not only known the prophecies about himself, but he was raised in the temple by his father, who was a priest. He would have also known the prophecies about the one he was coming to make a way for, Jesus. And Isaiah 61 says the Messiah was coming to set the captives free. So could you imagine John's words more like, "Hey, are you really the one that's supposed to set the captives free? Because by the way, I'm still here. I'm still in jail." It really seems like John's long period in jail has kind of either made him confused, or perhaps this man who was so stable at one time seems to be rocking. He was also a man that was so obedient to God and feels a little bit forgotten. Let's pick up in verse 4, and it says this. Jesus told them, "Go back to John and tell him what you have heard and seen. The blind see, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor." And he added, "God blesses those who do not fall away because of me." You see, the first part of Isaiah 61:1 says that Jesus will come and preach good news to the poor. The second part says that he will set the captives free. Jesus says, here to John, "I have come to preach the good news to the poor," period. He ends the statement there. He doesn't say the second part of that prophecy. This would be a direct message to John. I'm not going to set you free. Can you imagine being on the receiving end of this message and understanding what Jesus is really saying, as you can kind of read between the lines or the omission of the second part of that prophecy? That's why it's so important when the scriptures say, "And then he added." So Jesus did add something, just not what John wanted him to add. And he added, "God blesses those who do not fall away because of me." God blesses those who do not fall away because of my timing. God blesses those who do not fall away because of my priorities. In other words, blessed is the person who trusts in me when my timing is not their timing, when my priorities are not within their desires or their expectations. John, don't be offended by me, is what he is saying. See, John baptized Jesus. Remember, God literally came down from heaven in the form of a dove, announced that Jesus was his son. I don't believe that John is really questioning now, like, did that really happen? Was that really God? Some think, and I agree, that John's question is more of saying, Jesus, why aren't you doing more? And perhaps we can relate. Jesus, why aren't you doing more? I know you can. So why are you not doing more for me? And here Jesus answers John by saying, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and blessed are those who trust in me and in what I'm doing. Blessed are those who are not offended at me and who trust in me even when it's out of their expectations. Do we easily get offended by God when he doesn't do what we think he should do? Let's pick up in verse 7. And it says, as John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began talking about him, meaning John the Baptist, to the crowds. What kind of man did you go into the wilderness to see? Was he a weak reed, swayed by every breath of wind? Or were you expecting to see a man dressed in expensive clothes? No, people with expensive clothes live in palaces. Were you looking for a prophet? Yes, and he is more than a prophet. John is the man to whom the scriptures refer to when they say, look, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, and he will prepare your way before you. I tell you the truth. Of all who have ever lived, none is greater than John the Baptist. Yet even the least person in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he is. And from the time John the Baptist began preaching until now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcefully advancing, and violent people are attacking it. For before John came, all the prophets and the law of Moses looked forward to this present time. And if you are willing to accept what I say, he is Elijah, the one the prophets said would come. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Perhaps he didn't say this in front of John the Baptist's disciples because he knew some of the greatest moments of obedience is when you don't get the applause on earth. But Jesus just gave him a beautiful applause. You see, John wasn't supposed to be defined by his mission. He was supposed to be defined by Jesus. Jesus defined him. Jesus said he was steady, that he wasn't easily swayed. He said that he was humble. He said that he was called. He said that he was obedient, that he was a servant to God. In fact, he goes on to say no one who has ever lived was greater than John the Baptist. Yet he didn't lead massive people groups like Moses. He didn't do the miracles that Elijah did. He didn't sing or dance or worship like David. He didn't have all the wisdom in the world like Solomon. What was John the Baptist? He was simply a voice that listened to God. What do you want Jesus to say about you? My own hope, when I think about this question, is I want Jesus to be like, hey, that Nikki girl, yeah, she did what I asked her. She was terrified. She was scared. She really didn't even want to do it sometimes, but she did it. And she was a voice. And she listened to me. Therefore her voice became my voice. I mean, I would love that. I have a long way to go for that. But honestly, John had a big moment of doubt, and yet Jesus gives John this big applause. And I love that because he knows we're not going to be perfect. He doesn't want our flawlessness. He really wants our faithfulness. So why wasn't John chosen to be a disciple? Here's why. Because he was chosen for more. Okay, not more fame, not more money, not more comfort, not even more years. He was chosen for more purpose. Have you ever wondered what more looks like in God's eyes? I think more in God's eyes is quality over quantity. Like a few obedient months can outweigh a lifetime of just getting by. I mean, John did more in 6 months than many of us do in a lifetime, right? I think God's more will value transformation over circumstances. What I mean by that is like he's going to refine the prison, not always remove you from the prison. He's going to reveal himself in the fire, not always take you out of the fire. I think we look for the physical miracle, but what if the miracle is what God is doing in our hearts or the hearts of others who watch us go through the struggle? Also, more of God is always going to be more of God, not more from God, right? More of his peace, more of his love, more of his presence, just more of our Savior in our lives. My kids are always asking me to go to Target, and I know that they don't really want me to go to Target because they want to pick out laundry soap. Like, I know they want me to take them to the toy aisle. And sometimes I say yes because there's so much joy in walking with them, but I know what they really need is time with me. And so sometimes I say no because I know that we can sit on the back porch and don't have to get something physical, and they can actually get what they need. And that is more time with their mom. And the same can be true of God. At some point in all of our lives, the most more is the moment that we meet him face to face. Every earthly assignment is going to end, but eternity does not. Eternity with him is truly the ultimate more. And John was chosen not to be a disciple because he was actually chosen for more. And although it could have been really hard to understand with those years in prison, in one moment, one breath after John's execution, everything would have made sense. This is the best more ever. Remember what John says in John 3:30 when he says, "He must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less." And that's exactly what happened. Jesus becomes greater and greater, and John becomes less and less. When Jesus becomes greater in your life, everything else takes its proper place, even the desire for more. I want to leave you with some questions, like I always do, to kind of really pause and reflect. These are ones we've already asked, but do you easily get offended at God? And when He doesn't prioritize things the way that you think that He should, or do things the way that you think He should, remember, blessed are those who trust in Him. Second is this: what do you want Jesus to say about you? I think it's worth considering and then trying to live a life that models that. Even in the doubt, we always have opportunity to continue to be faithful. We're going to get back to actually the 12 disciples and their thoughts on the encounter that Jesus had early on in the ministry with the Samaritan woman at the well next time. It's going to be so good. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me here in the Word at Sweet Sycamore Devotions.